Hey guys, it's Thursday, and we are dealing with some cold and a little bit of a warm up on the way as we head into next week. I think that's going to change things, so it might feel a little bit nicer if you're tired of the cold. If you're looking for cold and wintry weather, I don't know. I think we're going to see a bit of a break heading into next week. I don't think winter is over. In fact, I think there's going to be a bit of a break toward the 20th of the month, and then heading into January, it could get quite interesting. Here's where we are right now. I was looking at the satellite this morning. This was interesting to look at. We've got a pretty decent subtropical jet coming in like this. Your northern branch up here, taking a dive south here with our low that's moving through the Great Lakes. That's bringing some snow as we head into today. It's also going to bring in some colder weather. We're definitely not done with the cold here across the Midwest and the East for now. Temperatures on the way down today, and in a lot of these areas, temperatures will be falling through the day Thursday, overnight, and look into the south. That cold is pushing all the way to the Gulf Coast, and if you look closely here into Florida, I mean, of course, once the water moves, or I should say, once the cold air moves across the relatively warm water of the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic, it gets modified some, but you can see that cold pushing down into Florida all the way through the weekend. Saturday, another cold morning here into the Northeast with temperatures across parts of Maine, near or below zero. And then we start to see a bit of a warming trend kick in as we head into Saturday afternoon. It'll first be felt here across parts of Iowa, Missouri, north up into Minnesota. We're probably going to crack into the 40s, not quite into parts of Wisconsin. We'll probably be in the 30s, and here, areas east of this likely not getting above freezing. But that does start to change as we head into Sunday. Sunday morning, another cold morning, but not nearly as cold. That Arctic air, you can see it. It's kind of retreating, right? Moving out of the northeast, and with southwest flow trying to develop here, at least westerly flow, numbers warming up on Sunday afternoon back into the 40s here now across Ohio, even some 50s into Virginia, Kentucky, back into Tennessee. Across the central United States, this is where the real cold air is as we head into tonight, into tomorrow. That starts to shift off to the east into Friday. Now we're looking at temperatures warming up here into the central plain states. So from South Dakota, Nebraska, down into Kansas and Oklahoma, warming back up into the 40s and 50s. And then moving into Saturday, another cold start during the morning hours, but we get even warmer. Temperatures in some places could crack 60, very close to it anyway. Not quite as warm here across Minnesota, up into the upper Midwest, into the northern plains, really up into Minnesota and up across South Dakota. Stuck in the 30s here. I mean, it's December, right? Across the west, temperatures relatively above average here. We're going to be in the 70s from Phoenix into the Central Valley into the 60s, but temperatures do start to fall as we head into next week with our storm that moves in. So as we move toward Sunday and Monday, there comes the cold into the Rockies, below zero temperatures at night, and some snow moving in too as our next weather maker moves through the west. Let's start in the east. We've got our low that's moving out across the northeast. That's going to take the rain and the snow with it. Now we're left with some upslope snow here and some snow showers into Vermont, into parts of New York, and the lake effect is going to kick in. We've got some snow going into parts of Ontario, into western New York, down into Pennsylvania. This fetch that's really streaming in here off of Lake Huron, and then it crosses Ontario, then it hits Lake Erie once again. Could be a decent band that tries to dump some heavy snow here into parts of western Pennsylvania, and then more snow showers up here across the UP of Michigan. Some of that starts to settle down, and then we start to feel the influence of our next weather maker heading into Friday. That could reinforce some snow shower activity here around the Great Lakes. Totals could get kind of high here, especially downwind of Lake Erie, close to Erie, Pennsylvania. I don't know that we see an additional 2 feet, but if you get stuck under a decent band, you might see at least a foot and a half of snow or so. Lesser amounts than what we saw last weekend, right? We were dealing with over a foot, 2, 3, 4, 5 feet of snow. Not quite as much this time, but nonetheless, some heavy snow here. The snow's starting to wind down here in the mountains of West Virginia as we move through the day today. The winds will start to back down too as high pressure builds in. So let's sort of recap where we are, and we'll take you through the rest of the week and into the weekend, into next week. There goes our system out of the northeast. It is windy here. It's going to be cold with temperatures falling. We've talked about that. Across the south, temperatures on the way down too as high pressure builds in. This air mass is coming straight from the Arctic, so it's modified somewhat as it's crossed the open land here. Not a lot of snowpack on the ground across the U.S., so it's a little bit warmer than once it crossed out of Canada, which, by the way, we're going to continue to see some snow build here in this region. Rain breaking out across Texas. That's been in the models over the last couple of weeks, and I think that's happening. And here's our next storm as we head into Saturday, moving into the Pacific Northwest. Rain continues in Texas on Sunday. If anything, that looks like it starts to expand northeast as we head through the day Sunday into the Mississippi Valley, north all the way to Missouri, western parts of Tennessee and Kentucky, down into Mississippi and Alabama. Here comes the low that's going to bring some snow here across the Rockies, also in parts of Manitoba, Saskatchewan. Up in this area, we are going to continue to lay some snow down. So that means that cold air that's going to be building to the north as it moves south, it's going to get primed to drop some cold air, at least keep the air cold, I guess, as it moves south into the U.S. This is where things get interesting heading into next Tuesday. What do we see across the Great Lakes? What do we see across the east? Well, at this point, it looks like we're getting some cold air moving in behind our next system. Too warm for snow in the east out ahead of this with some decent southwest flow, our subtropical jet pulling in some moisture. This is where things get a little wonky, I guess. As we head into Wednesday, the European overnight was trying to dig a pretty big trough out here. You've got your cold front moving to the east, something like this. And what's happening is you're getting an area of low pressure that's forming along this front and moving north. At least that's what the European is trying to do. And on the backside of that, with enough return flow in the mid and upper levels like this, it's trying to put some moisture back here and cause some snow into parts of western New York, Pennsylvania. Does that come to pass? I don't know. I mean, it's still about a week out, so there could be a lot of changes. The GFS, just for kicks, I want to show you what it's showing heading into next week. Your front blows through. There's your low. Your front like this. It's a little more progressive and moving that front through fairly quickly, although you can see a bit of a ripple of low pressure trying to develop along that. So that's something we'll need to watch heading into next week. What happens after this? A lot of folks going, is it going to be cold this winter? Are we going to get big snows where I am? I don't know. I have no idea, especially in the long term. No one really knows. And if they tell you they do, there's no way. But it looks like we might see a weak system moving through the northeast sometime late next week. And then I do think as we head into the 14th, 15th, 16th, and especially closer to the 20th, it starts to get active across the west. We've had a bit of a break. I think there's more snow here. I think more rain is moving into the west, and I think that will be the pattern. Another pattern that I think is starting to set up as we head toward the 16th, 17th, 18th, somewhere through that time frame would be a warmer setup across the central and eastern United States. Now, will you get these storms that move through? I think you will. This is really just going out looking at the GFS, which has terrible feedback problems, but it gets the idea that we're storming across the west, maybe more of a zonal flow here to the east, maybe a bit of a southwest flow. Let's go to the ensembles. This kind of tells the story a little bit better here in the upper levels. This is where we are now. There's your big trough across the east, ridge across the west. There's our storm that's going to bring, not really a big storm, but the system is going to bring the snow and the rain and the colder weather into the west as we head into early next week. And then if you really take that out, there's that trough that's going to bring that cold air into the central United States toward the middle part of next week. Our questionable snow here really in this area heading into Wednesday and Thursday and Friday of next week as our temperatures really clash here, and then that puts us into a cold pattern heading into next weekend with still warmer temperatures across the west. And then here's where it flips as we head into the 15th, 16th, 17th. Now we've got some colder weather showing up across the west, warmer temperatures across the east. Now the ensembles have a tendency to flatten these ridges and troughs out as you go out in time, but the idea, I think, is for some warmer air here, and then, if anything, a zonal flow setting up, and then as we head toward the end of the month, I think we start to turn colder. If you take the European weeklies out, which go even further out in time, now we're just kind of looking at the pattern. Do we see that being reflected here? Well, maybe a little bit. You can see your trough in the east in the short term, and then it tries to go to the west a little bit here. And then as we head into the end of the month, I think this is interesting. Now you've got a pretty well-defined trough here, your polar vortex in this region. It's showing a colder pattern heading into January. I think that could be very cold too. So let's wait and see what happens. It's just a model, and it's going to do what it's going to do, right? All right, if you made it this far, I hope it means you enjoyed the content. If you're new to the channel, I'm Travis Roberts. I used to be a chief meteorologist on television, and I would love if you would subscribe to the channel. Hundreds of you, actually thousands over the last month, have subscribed, and I appreciate you guys coming over and coming back. Hope you have a great Thursday. See you next time.